Hey, it's Soul, and welcome back to Warcraft Weekly, the show that I finally got around to making after playing a lot of WoW. Like, a lot of WoW. This week is a definite roller coaster of news, and I'm here as usual to smooth the ride. So, help feed the algorithm by liking this video and by subscribing for more content. Before we get to the news though, I have a correction to cover. Over most of the duration of the 915 PTR, I've been talking up the Covenant switching perks specific to cosmetics that, hey, as soon as you hit Renown 81 time, all the Covenant locked transmogs and mounts and pets open up, and you can whip up the monstrosity of your choice. Well, that was wrong, and clarified in the official 915 patch notes. One would have to reach Renown 80 on each Covenant, but when you do, any cosmetics that are unlocked from that Covenant will be available for use on all characters. Now, I'm gonna try to make this clear, okay? I've reached Renown 80 for just the Kyrian Covenant on my plate-wearing Paladin. Then I got onto one of my cloth-wearing characters, had them join the Kyrian, and do a little bit of questing to unlock a glove transmog, whoop-de-doo. Then I switched to a different cloth-wearing character who is not a part of the Kyrian Covenant, and voila! I can now transmog that glove appearance. I was a little bit paranoid with double-checking this. Like, I know that things like the 9.1 appearances are unlocked for everybody, but I wanted to test armor-specific pieces and not just the ones that are flagged as cosmetic. So I apologize for the misinformation. I'm sure that some folks are more than a little bit disappointed. Like, even I was thinking to myself, how could I have been so wrong? Or actually, how could Blizzard have worded their statements in such a misleading way? I mean, they promised, and then I got over it. In fact, I'm pretty sure I've logged more hours into WoW this week than I have in like the past 2 months put together, pounding away at the Anima and the Renown game, completing all the Covenant campaigns too. Now, not being able to see my unlocks until Renown 80 per Covenant does suck, but speaking for me, I had to face the obvious reality. It is going to be a while until I unlock every cosmetic in every Covenant just for one of my characters. If the time comes and I want to unlock all the armor types for the Kyrian, for example, it's not going to feel as daunting as it did on my Paladin, because on him, I also unlocked all the pets, all the mounts, the Korthia appearances, and whatever transmog. Renown 80 is going to happen well before I finish farming up all this other stuff. So help me out, folks. Like, that's an example of what people call copium, right? I mean, I think I'm getting it. I'm making myself feel a little bit better and rationalizing all this bad news, because if that's how the word copium is used, I've got to humbly disagree with that turn of phrase, because I see this kind of, I don't know, like self-reflection and re-examining the facts as, I don't know, getting over it. Anyway, sorry again for the error, and let's do the news. Patch 915 is out, unleashing almost nothing new, but opening up the game in ways that we've been hoping for since the Shadowlands alpha. This is not a patch that's going to get the millions re-upping their subscription, but my guess is that it reinforces a certain audience, the collection-driven audience, to be out and about in the world, finding stuff, and I guess putting the Shadowlands back into a drought. Of course, the patch came with some follow-ups and hotfixes. For a time in Korthia, the rare Observer Yorick was being farmed like a punching bag thanks to its very fast respawn rate, and the patch change that let rares in Korthia be continuously farmed. Since then, the spawn rate was fixed
because obviously.
But as a counterpoint, why not increase the spawn rate of all the rares in Korthia too? I mean, not to the point where it's kind of buggy, but you know, just make it like, I don't know, twice as fast? I'm an early bird, so it's fun to be up in the morning to follow the cloud of players chasing one rare after another before the spawns get all jacked up and people start splitting off. And unlike other reputations and zone features in the World of Warcraft expansions, Korthia is primarily focused on player power, between conduit and socket upgrades, as well as upgradable gear. We're at a point in the season where, like, screw it, just let players gear up. It's not gonna last forever anyway. Tweaking the spawn rate doesn't sound like such a huge stretch, especially because of this next part. There's a sort of curious change with both Conquest and Valor lifting their currency caps entirely for the remainder of the season. According to a blue post, the original caps were in place to prevent having a dominant advantage by playing an excessive amount of hours in PvP and Mythic Plus. As the weeks go by and the cap increases, we reach a point where there's no longer a dominant advantage in gear acquisition with grinding Conquest and Valor, and it's friendlier to simply remove the cap entirely for those who are catching up on gearing alt until the next season begins. I want to get your folks' thoughts on this, because this seems like a little bit deeper than it sounds, even if the WoW team tends to not look beyond what's right in front of them, and here's what I mean. I get why the season caps are in place, like it's a way to help curb really aberrant behavior, notably in PvP, where those who get gear faster can sort of push other players down, making their gearing up feel feel even slower than it would be if the playing field were a bit more even. This potentially could have happened in Mythic Plus as well. In theory, someone could grind their way to a full 246 sets, plus some 252s in just a few short weeks. However, we're now at a stage where those caps aren't noticeable to anybody but career players of Mythic Plus and rated PvP. The caps give them less of a reason to play beyond a handful of games or dungeons. My hopes are that this practice of eventually lifting the caps becomes a regular thing that doesn't need a client-side patch to implement. But on the PvE side of things, with Mythic Plus, it's easy to argue that lifting the caps doesn't mean a whole lot. Sure, there's a new loot box that you can dump excess Valor on, and you can use that loot box to outfit an alt with upgradable Mythic Plus gear, or you can hope to get an IQD or another best-in-slot piece on your current character. But this just doesn't feel like enough. In the near future, I'm going to produce a more focused video on PvE rewards in World of Warcraft and get really specific on, this kind of dream mode or kind of a redesign. But for now, I'm going to say that in the long term, World of Warcraft needs a currency like Valor to be not specific to just one segment of PvE content like Mythic Plus, but all PvE content, whether it's current or even legacy. I'm sure I triggered like a thought or three, so share that in a comment. Next, we have got to talk about the WoW Community Council and some of the players' initial reactions. Earlier this week, the WoW team released a statement calling for volunteers, and of them, will select at least 100 people who share viewpoints from every facet of World of Warcraft, from PvE to PvP players, the so-called casual and hardcore, from classic players to legacy content farmers, role players and loreheads, and transmog enthusiasts. With the gathering of players is the intention / hope / promise, gotta love that trigger word, that there will be healthy discussions between developers and all of these community perspectives on a wide range of topics, some of which will be started by the developer team, probably a lot of them started by these council members who will be championing their own agenda. The initial reaction from me? Cool. The biggest reason is because while this is going to be a forum that only a handful of people will have access to, viewing it is going to be public. So for many of us, this is going to be like watching a reality show being played out, and a massive magnifying glass is going to be put specifically on the WoW team. Trust me, content will be made as we read these posts. Forum statements will turn into screenshots of those statements to become Twitter posts, and the latest thing from, the mouth of the blues every day here on this channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe. But if this makes the WoW team more inclined to participate in open discussion, that's a plus. It also gives these council members, if they choose to not be anonymous because you can, a kind of a elevation in status. PvP communities, for example, might rally behind these PvP-centric members and encourage or / pressure them to push certain feedback. And members are only there for a year before all of them are unflagged and the selection process begins anew. I can see the merit of having a curated forum like this. Obviously, we've seen tons and tons of feedback over the years, but I can also see the difficulty in quantifying player feedback, even with data science, and in my opinion, that doesn't seem to be working so well. I think of a focus group like this as more analog. It's a big contrast compared to what we see as like viral or trending or highly upvoted. More importantly, as members post threads and comments, there's less likelihood that they'll be reduced to shouting matches and talking down. At worst, that sort of behavior will at least be easier to moderate. I wouldn't be surprised if content creators and streamers end up being quietly blacklisted from this council, not because they're biased or unfair, but because those are easy data points to capture. The person's community already leans towards like this or that content, and that creator will be watching these forums and commenting on those posts anyway. But here's the uncool part of a council like this, and we're already seeing it play out with the reactions, notably from voices in the community, big and small, who feel like players haven't been listened to. For some, making an effort like this must feel insulting, as if now things are going to be different. I have a feeling that what we're going to see from this council is a reflection of what Blizzard sees when designing their game. Tons of different playstyles, preferences, and perspectives that conflict with one another. What's really going to infuriate some people is that we're going to observe some of these council members say things that we will absolutely not agree with, or even worse, we'll disrespect some of these people because we might not think that their perspective is as important as ours. And also consider the post-selection process. People may wonder why they or their favorite creator or streamer was not selected. They may wonder if they were selected but they decided to stay anonymous. Basically, there's going to be a lot of exterior toxicity, which shouldn't affect the council itself, but will no doubt make observers feel like they're not participating because they're not. Which again could make things worse, because then it feels like people outside of the council have like no say at all compared to the people that are inside. Another part that'll probably suck, a lot of folks already have expectations that this community council will have a seat at the table, that someone like me could rally the council into making one of my numerous agendas like player housing or faction-wide stuff, PvE currencies, transmog farming, and all that stuff become a reality. Or with the now confirmed 9.2, the player council will be able to give actionable feedback that they expect the WoW team can just turn on a dime. By the way, big thanks to Dan for posting this onto Twitter. 9.2 PTR soon, maybe. I seriously doubt the council is going to work like, hey Blizzard, here's my feedback and ideas on a new feature, get to it, bitch. Outside of small things like conduit energy, which the WoW team was just slow on the reaction to, bigger changes in design like pulling the ripcord or improving or adding a new feature, that takes months to design, let alone engineer and test and implement. And even before that, at the producer level, all of that needs to be slotted into a patch cycle way in advance. You can call those excuses if you like, but that's the boring and slow-moving reality of game design. So even if the council does share a collective voice on something, unless it's something that can be hotfixed, we're not going to see any meaningful change based on that for a long time. Probably not until the next council has been selected. But I'm still excited for the player council because it gives an opportunity for voices to be heard who may not have their views be represented by big content creators. But now, I turn it over to you folks. Do you think this is going to make any difference at all? Are we better off just listening to the loudest voices on social media? Next, I only want to lightly touch on the recent quarterly earnings call from Activision Blizzard, which doesn't speak so great for the near future when it comes to Blizzard games. In the report, there's no surprise that they made money, whoop-de-doo. However, there are strong indications that Overwatch 2 and Diablo 4 will be pushed back to a 2023 release. In their press release, the company says that it has become apparent that some of the Blizzard content planned for next year will benefit from more development time to reach its full potential. So that's great, guys. Classic Blizzard's coming back and the game is ready when it's ready. Everyone's happy, right? Report follows up saying that we are still planning to deliver a substantial amount of content from Blizzard next year. We already know Diablo Immortal and WoW's patch 9.2 is going to launch within the first half of 2022. Whether or not there's going to be a patch 9.3 will decide if a WoW expansion can feasibly launch by the end of next year, which would make the timeline way too close for comfort, but it is possible, so let's have some fun and envision a scenario. If 9.2 is going to be the conclusion of the Shadowlands storyline, when it's announced, it may be announced alongside WoW's next expansion, given that 1 year time frame to get to it if they also plan on skipping patch 9.2.5. So how does one even imagine a timely expansion launch with the good faith in Blizzard Entertainment at an all-time low? On top of drug-based faith, it really depends on what the scope of the next expansion is going to be. It could be that Blizzard is going to make a bona fide filler expansion that brings us back to Azeroth and still gives us like seasons of content and dungeons and raids and new places to explore maybe, but done differently, because most of the work on its upcoming expansion will mostly address the game's more pressing concerns that have made many players lose their patience and dip out. For example, how about a clean transition into cross-faction content, or elevating the champions of Azeroth above the faction divide, as I'm trying to call it now? How about scaling content better to basically add the duty finder to World of Warcraft, letting all the old dungeons and raids be available for random queuing? How about a massive overhaul to professions, from leveling to the cool things that you can make? How about a free trial period that actually means something? How about the thing that you know that I'll mention that I don't even have to mention? I'm only speaking for me, but I wouldn't mind that. Just a real filler expansion that gives the World of Warcraft team the time and the opportunity to identify and clean up some of the messes that they made down the road. The question for you folks at home is, how would you feel about a filler expansion that might, I don't know, repurpose old zones, raids, and dungeons, but goes big on overhauling system design with an eye towards WoW's future? Lastly, in some bitter news with just a sprinkle of sweet, Blizzard co-lead Jen Oneal is stepping down from her position and will leave the company at the end of this year, giving Mike Ybarra Sarah the reins as the sole lead in the studio. In an official statement, she says, "Sometimes our adventures can keep you on the quest that you set on, but sometimes a new quest beckons us." She continues saying that she's inspired by the passion of everyone here at Blizzard, working towards meaningful, lasting change with their whole hearts. "This energy has inspired me to step out and explore how can I do more to have games and diversity intersect, and hopefully make a broader industry impact that will benefit Blizzard and other studios as well." Jen was an industry veteran of over 20 years, starting off as a QA tester for Tenchu Stealth Assassins, and went on from being a tester to a producer, and finally became the studio head of Vicarious Visions, a support studio for Activision before it was recently dissolved and folded into other projects. She also holds a position on the board of Women in Games International and is the executive chair for the Activision Blizzard LGBTQ+ employee network, so her statement makes it clear to me at least that she's looking towards a brighter future, with more inclusivity for marginalized groups in the industry. Just the other day, an unofficial union over at Ubisoft restated their demands for change after 100 days of their demands for accountability not being met. Some find dunking on Blizzard fun, and having one of the few female leads at Activision Blizzard leave after such a short tenure at the top, it's really not good news. My hopes though are that these ripples influence better education programs for young people, which leads to more qualified candidates from underprivileged groups. Which leaves us with Mike. Mike, who probably has a better Mythic Plus score than you. Him leading the company solo does not automatically mean a return to the boys club, but it does produce some worry. It definitely helps to have a diverse leadership to give diverse perspectives, but the way that I see it, you don't have to be a woman or a part of the LGBTQ+ community to listen to their needs or to be a champion for them. You've just got to be a decent person with open eyes and ears. The first Mike, he made the company what it is today, both the good and the bad. I hope that this Mike makes it better. I want to wrap up with a little segment that I call the thing that I've been playing this week. And outside of WoW, that thing I've been playing is Lost Ark, an MMO action RPG developed in Korea. It's in beta right now, and it'll release in Western regions with help from Amazon Game Studios. It is a bit difficult to compare it to a single game, because it has traditional MMO elements like WoW and Final Fantasy XIV, with quests and story and endgame activities like PvP and raiding, but the experience is an overhead click-to-move like Path of Exile or Diablo. I only gave it like a day of playtime, so take that as it is, but here are my impressions. In general, it plays pretty damn well. The controls are responsive, and it natively has controller support. It's very flashy with huge abilities, and it's contextualized with like tons and tons of monsters on the field that give that Diablo or Dynasty Warriors sort of feel. The classes seem pretty cool and they have their own feel. However, the class that I played, the Summoner, it feels pretty janky compared to the others. And I want to be very, very clear, this is a preference thing. The game does not seem bad at all. I just had that impression that, coming into this, okay, I'm playing an ARPG, this is a summoner, and I was hoping for gameplay that was like me with a pet, and I manage the pet while debuffing enemies, or something like that. It turns out that their version of a summoner is made up of 15-second duration summons that act more like cooldowns, and they don't seem to provide aggro management, and otherwise, I just use my nukes or my favorite ability on their freaking machine gun birds. In fact, you can call them birds, right? No, okay. The game is going to be free to play, which obviously has its own stigma. I had an opportunity to look at the shop and what it offers. Now, it definitely offers opportunities to save time by giving up real money. This gives you some quality of life perks like remote banking and storage, but there's no sort of ownage that makes you impossibly stronger than people who just play the game for free. My guess though is that for the low price of 10 or so bucks a month, you can live fairly comfortably with a bunch of quality of life buffs. Enough for them to make some cash and a little enough for you to throw down once, just once, but ooh man, now you can upgrade your storage pet to do even more stuff, and that's how they get ya! The game is coming out in March of next year, and with it being free to play, it's hard for me to not suggest, hey, just give it a shot, what have you got to lose? As for me, the lack of a pet class in the game, it's kind of a turnoff. That's, and I can get that from Diablo or Path of Exile, but well, don't say I didn't at least try. That's going to be the show for this week, and there's one more question for you folks. Are you still playing WoW? Did you come back for the patch, and if so, how's your journey been so far? I gotta say, for me it feels good to be on and re-immersed into the game, even if it's at a really chill level. But it was also a lot of fun to try something new with Lost Ark, and who knows, maybe I'll play it a little bit more during the beta and find something to get super excited over. If so, I'll be sharing some of that experience with you next week on stream. Maybe I'll subject you to the last bit of farming that I need to do in Final Fantasy XIV so I can get all them crafting jobs to 80 because, oh, that's been quite a journey. Anyway, let's give thanks to the excellent folks over on Twitch. We had some great shows this week, along with our valued patrons, including Jeremy for stepping it up, and to all of you who made it to the end. You guys are great, and I appreciate each and every one of you. Have a great weekend, and until then, stay safe, stay healthy, and stay breezy.